you know what you're saying that I think is really, I want to just kind of emphasize is that, when you're actively surviving domestic violence, you're actively in trauma. Like
Absolutely.
you're actively being traumatized. Your body and your brain is actively being traumatized. And so
Yeah.
a lot of your brain's energy is going, to your point, to surviving the
Absolutely.
trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So the forgetfulness, the distractions,
Yes.
it's because your brain's energy is
Yeah.
focused on survival. And
Yeah.
so you go to work and you do your other responsibilities. Sometimes you're just going through the motions. Sometimes you're actually able to do well, but you're not at full capacity because your brain's primary function is to keep you safe. And so
Survival. That's right.
your point of the forgetfulness, the distractions, the uncertainty.
The sleepiness. Tonya, when I look back, I could not believe how much I yawned at work. It was insane. Like that little thing just yawning because I was so tired all the time. I could not believe, I mean, seriously, I think back of like being in meetings and just constantly yawning.
Right.
It's such a little nuanced thing, but I thought about it all the time. I just constantly would yawn because I was always sleepy because we argued the night before, and I'm like, I'm exhausted and I'm a single mom. So like, and I had a kid who was young at the time. So I'm dealing with all of that. Right. And I look back like thinking it had to be whatever you want to call it. Right. Higher power, God, source, whatever you want to call it, to keep me going because I was mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and financially drained. Like I worked part-time. I didn't make a lot of money. And sometimes when I'm having these conversations with employers, I'm also talking about you need to pay your people, especially your women, especially your Black and Latino and Indigenous women, because we don't get paid enough. And so that is a barrier to us escaping, is not being able to afford to actually leave. And that was a big reason why I stayed. I did not think that I could survive on my own.
That is a really, I think, very important truth of the gender gap in economic pay, right? Right. Yes, it's unfair, but it means it limits people's choices significantly when they're not paid the value that their counterparts are paid, right? So I appreciate you mentioning that. Like, so I think that's something for organizations to consider when you're looking at pay scales and pay equity. Like, I'm going to say it's just the right thing to do, that you pay people fairly and equitably, but also the safety and security that it affords people to make different decisions because they have the income that they need, right? Like that right there, I think is a really concrete policy adjustment that employers can do. And so I would say people actually who are listening to this, you might not be the owner of the company. You may not make those decisions, but the way to advocate for gender pay equity, this is another avenue, right? This is another avenue of creating more safety for people who work in the organization.